Rite of the 9 is right around the corner, and I was trying to think of what the best Warlock build is going into this, and I came up with Sanguine Alchemy on Solar Warlock with Well. This will boost your damage to crazy levels, because Sanguine Alchemy will give you 4 times Weapon Surge matching your super. It will also give you a 10% damage boost to enemies that are marked, which is typically bosses. And then on top of that, because of the artifact perk Limit Break, that will boost all your weapon damage in your well for a time after you've cast your well, and that is just crazy damage boost. You can out damage pretty much everything else in the game just by using this on well, not even having a damaging super, and you can out damage all your teammates. It's great. If you don't trust me, check out Aegis. He is the best damage tester around, and he has done a lot of great testing of different setups, and it's solid. It's also just pretty solid in normal gameplay. You are a little bit more static. You have to kind of stay in your rift, but there's a lot of weapons that work with that, and you can just churn through enemies, and you're very hard to kill, especially on Solar with Restoration 2 and Radiant and just everything else stacked up. It is wild. You can see here, I'm working through a Legend Campaign mission just to test. I'm using Finality's Augur just because I really like it, and it is pretty good, and it's about to get buffed. See, we pop our well here, and then we just shoot this boss and get bait and switch up, and this boss just gets destroyed by all the weapon damage boosts. If that sounds good to you, let's get into it. I'm Engineer. So, just giving you an overview of the build. The goal is to do crazy DPS while running well, which I would have not thought of before, but it is very effective now. This is purely used for boss DPS and some team support. It definitely works up to master and high level content. You will have to play a little bit carefully, like always in high content, but that's fine. On the pro side, you can get plus 123% solar weapon damage boost. And then if you're using a linear fusion rifle this episode with the artifact perk particle reconstruction, you can get your damage boost on those up to plus 185%. That is almost 3 times the damage, which is just absolutely crazy, especially because linear fusion rifles are very good in the current meta. You can actually swap to other elements. You don't have to stay on your well. When you cast your well, you can switch subclasses, and Sanguine Alchemy will give you those 4 times weapon surges to that element. So you can take advantage of that and just switch to, say, Arc for Queensbreaker. It's very good. This has kind of been refreshing because well is really helpful in a lot of dungeon and raid activities, and it's usually kind of boring to run, but this makes it kind of feel a lot better because you can do some really solid damage and not feel like you're just kind of supporting the team and keeping them alive. On the con side, this doesn't work very great solo. A lot of this is built around supporting your team just to keep your ability regen going. There's not a lot of exciting ability spam, though. The more you support your team, Ember of Benevolence will kick in and help you out, and it's still well built. If you like doing damage with your super directly, this isn't the build, but it's still very good, and I think it's going to be extremely effective in the stuff coming up. I mentioned it earlier, but Aegis is a community member who does a lot of boss DPS testing. I will link his spreadsheet in the description. It is a great resource for all your best damage rotations. I'm not that good, but it is good to know kind of what is the very, very peak of the meta. Also, I have a bad habit of making too many builds whenever I find a cool exotic like this. So there are 4 other Sanguine Alchemy builds at the end of this video. I will do the video as normal and then just briefly go through those. So definitely hang in for that, or just skip to it if you want to. I'll have timestamps through the whole video because I'm a nice person and I care about you guys. All right, let's get into it. So first up, our exotic is Sanguine Alchemy. It's a base game exotic, so you can get it from any source of exotics in the game, and you don't need to own any expansion whatsoever to do it, which is awesome. So first, when you're in a Rift or Well of Radiance, you get 4 times super matching weapon surge. If you damage an enemy, it applies a mark to them for 5 seconds, and those enemies receive 10% increased damage just from you. On top of that, if you're in a Rift, as long as you keep getting kills, your Rift will not despawn. It will keep being extended forever and ever and ever. If you are in an activity where you can stay in one place, you can stay in that Rift forever, and it is really cool. It's really fun, and it can help with some builds that kind of rely on that. Very short preview of something ahead, but like say you're using Arc Soul on Arc, you will have Arc Soul forever because you'll just be in your Rift forever, and you'll get that Rift back super fast because of how Arc is built, and it's just really cool. Super fun exotic, not super complicated, very subclass neutral, but a lot of ways to build with it. Let's get into our aspects and abilities. First, we want Touch of Flame, because that gives you Restoration 2 on healing grenades for you and your allies, and that is very useful. If you're in easier content, feel free to switch out those healing grenades for a different damaging grenade like fusion grenades, and that's totally fine. For the second aspect, I take Hellion. It is more damage. but other options work too. If you want to be a little bit more mobile, Icarus Dash is really fun, but Hellion is just pure extra damage and it helps keep your buffs up, and I really like that. Your super should be Well of Radiance. That's what we're here for, and that's how it works. As mentioned earlier, Healing Grenade is what I recommend for the grenade. That has an 87.5% flat gain factor, which is one of the highest ones, but really solid for support and will help proc one of our fragments. We'll talk about it in a minute. For the melee, I generally recommend Celestial Fire for most boss fights because it has range. Incendiary Snap is good if you're being more mobile or kind of up close to enemies, so use whichever one you feel like. They're both great. For the class ability, I recommend Healing Rift. You can go for Empowering Rift, but all that really does is give you a kind of knockoff Radiant, which we can get from just using a melee, and it's not really that beneficial. And Healing Rift is great, and it will also proc that fragment we're about to talk about. All rifts have a 50% flat gain factor, so all sources of chunk ability energy for rifts will only give half of the energy, and that sucks. That is why the extension is so nice, but we have some ways to work around this, especially in this class. So let's talk about our fragments. First, we want Ember of Singeing, because this will give us plus 400% base class ability regen whenever we apply Scorch to enemies. So we need to keep that in mind because we definitely want to be applying Scorch to enemies for that. And then, because this is a team support build, I recommend Ember of Benevolence, which will boost all ability regen by plus 400% whenever you buff an ally or heal an ally. So that is Cure, that is Radiant, Restoration, Healing Rifts, or Reviving Allies. And your well includes this too. So that is the other reason we were taking Healing Rift, is because this will proc this. Very effective. Now, if you are playing solo, do not bring this fragment. It is completely useless. Switch to something else. Next, we want to take Ember of Torches. That lets us give Radiant to us and our allies whenever we use our powered melee. Radiant is a 20% weapon damage boost for you and allies, so that is very helpful and one of the best features of Solar. Then we're going to take Ember of Empyrean, because this lets us extend both Radiant and Restoration by getting solar kills. These could be solar ability or weapon kills, both are effective, but you just want as much solar damage going out as possible. Some alternative fragments, if say for you want to drop Benevolence or one of these other fragments doesn't work for you, Ember of Solace will make all your buffs last 50% longer, and that is really helpful for keeping them up. And then a really fun one is Ember of Combustion, because when you're in a well, all your weapon damage counts as super damage. So if you use a solar weapon, it is solar super damage. That means every solar weapon kill while in your well will cause an ignition, and it is so much fun. It's just explosions everywhere. It's crazy ad clear. It's really cool. Can't recommend it enough. It's really fun if you're in like ad clear situations. So definitely recommend you do that. Just if you don't want to switch this build, but you still want to have great ad clear, it's a really fun way to do it. Where are mods and armor stats? The mod setup is pretty basic on this. You want to make orbs with weapon kills and make orbs with Reaper, because we will cast our class ability fairly often. And beyond that, it's all pretty basic. We're already covering our weapon surges on exotic. We are really not using that many damaging abilities. So just focus on things like getting heavy ammo, get a little bit of orbs where you can, support your weapon with reload speed or something like that. And just get a little bit of ability energy in there. I'm taking all the orb mods on the legs to get ability energy. I'm using take whatever mods you can just to boost a little bit of ability energy here, and that's pretty much it. It's not too complicated. On the stats side, and this will hold true for all the builds I'm talking about today, max resilience, max discipline, get as much recovery as you can possibly fit while keeping strength and intellect to at least 30, and that's it. That's all we need. Recovery is affecting our class ability regen, so we need that up pretty decently, but we still want to make sure we can throw grenades and keep the damage resistance of resilience. Let's briefly talk about artifact perks. This is not a solar season, but there are 2 artifact perks that are very relevant to damage phases, no matter what subclass you are on. First, Particle Reconstruction is one of the juiciest buffs to a weapon they get right now, and that is a specialized weaken just for linear fusion rifles that tops out at 27.6% weakening effect. This does not stack with a 30% weaken like from Tether, so really you don't need to run Tether. I don't recommend it, but it is extremely strong and it makes linear fusions just very good in the current meta. Solar is really good at empowering buffs and buffing the damage, but doesn't have many sources of weaken, so this is crazy because you can get a very strong weaken on Solar and just really maximize your damage. The other artifact perk that we really care about, and both of these are in column 5, is Limit Break, because when you cast your super while at critical health or affected by an element matching buff, you get 30% increased super ability damage for 8 seconds. That's not super long, but that's about half the duration of your well. But as I mentioned before, all your weapon damage while in your well counts as super damage. So that is 30% extra DPS for those first 8 seconds, and it's Really helpful. Don't worry too much about the other artifact perks. Take whatever you need depending on the build, but these are just really effective. Briefly talking about the weapon damage stacking. Buff stack multiplicatively. So for each buff, you add 1 or 100% to it, and then you will multiply all those by each other, and then you will get a resultant factor. And if you want to get just the plus bonus, you just subtract 1 from that. I have a spreadsheet for it. I can link it in the description. The math's not super hard though. So here we get the 25% bonus of Well of Radiance. Keep in mind, if you're using Radiant instead of Well of Radiance, that is only a 20% boost compared to Well of Radiance, so a little bit lower. Sanguine Alchemy buff is a 10% effect. Weapon Surge times 4 is another 25%. Particle Reconstruction is 27.6%, and then Limit Break is 30%. So that tops out at 185% weapon damage boost. And that's only for the first 8 seconds, and then it'll drop off just a little bit. But it is crazy good. Just incredible damage. So that's kind of why we're here. A nifty part of this build is if you want to take advantage of the weapon surge benefits, but with a different weapon type, as soon as you drop your well, swap your subclass to whatever element you need to match your heavy, and you will get those weapon surges immediately while benefiting from the well. It is very effective. A lot of people are doing it with an Arc Super and Queensbreaker because it's so good this episode, but you can really do it with anything. So keep that in mind. Now let's talk about weapons. First, our solar DPS weapons. And we have a very great list of these. Lord of Wolves I'm listing here. It is about to get a 30% nerf to its hipfire damage, but it's still going to be extremely good. It's just insanely broken right now, but after the nerf, it's going to be very reasonable, still very strong. Whisper of the Worm is always a really strong DPS option. It's very ranged, you have to land crits. Dragon's Breath is medium range, auto reload, so you don't want to be close to it because the explosions and all, but very solid DPS weapon, good in a lot of activities. Finality's Augur is from the new dungeon, and it's really fun. It's about to get a lot of quality of life buffs, which I think will be really great, but it has 8 turrets, so you can kind of mix up your damage a little bit and do a lot of really solid DPS. Also, don't forget that Finality's Augur is a linear fusion rifle, so all that Particle Reconstruction is going to apply to it, and it's very effective with that. Another linear fusion would be Sleeper Simulant. This is a old and solid linear fusion rifle, and it does great damage. On the legendary side, we have our rockets, Apex Predator and Hezen Vengeance. Hezen Vengeance is the current best DPS heavy in the game at the moment. It has so much going for it. There's a great artifact perk for it. It will automatically reload when you cast your super. It is just crazy good. So definitely use that if you have access to it or you have it crafted. On the linear fusion side, we have 2 linear fusion rifles, both from raids. We have Cataclysmic from Vow the Disciple, and then we have Briar's Contempt from Root of Nightmares, and both these are just extremely good DPS options for linear fusion rifles. And they won't take up your exotic slot, so you can use it for something else. Now, if you are trying to do the swapping thing, a few weapons to consider. The Queenbreaker on Arc. It is probably one of the best DPS weapons in the game currently, and it is very accessible for most people and has a pretty low skill floor, so that's very helpful. There's also Legend of Acreus, which is a arc shotgun. It is very strong if you're right on top of an enemy, but it is only good to use if you have the catalyst, so watch there for that. On Void, we have Leviathan's Breath. This is a really solid precision option, does crazy good damage and inflicts volatile, which is a little bit redundant this episode, but very good nonetheless. And then on Strand, we have Euphony, which is the raid exotic from Salvation's Edge, and it is very strong. It will also be providing constant sever because of the threadlings if you have that artifact boost, but really solid DPS option, and once again a linear fusion rifle, so it's going to take advantage of all those buffs. You can also use Microcosm. Now this is kinetic, it won't get the weapon surges, but it does take the 10% boost from Sanguine Alchemy, and you don't need to swap anything for it. You can still take advantage of the 4x weapon surges on, say, a special weapon or a sniper or something like that, and just kind of swap to this. And you can't even run kinetic weapon surges if you really want to on top of your exotic provided free solar weapon surges. So consider that as well. Lastly, I'd mentioned that legendary heavy grenade launchers are still very good, but we don't have a good solar one. So there's the Stasis VS Chill Inhibitor, there's the Void Edge Transit, and the Strand Wicked Sister. And there's also Cataphract from Trials, which is another good Strand option, but all these are really good. And if you really want to use these for, say, a quick DPS phase, that could be a very good reason to swap. One last tab of weapons is you want a solar add clear weapon because of Ember of Empyrean. We need to get solar kills rapidly, and your primary weapon kills will also be the strongest generators of heavy ammo via your heavy ammo finder, and exotic primary weapons will generate ammo 30% faster than those even. So got a few here. Sunshot is just really good, and all of its explosions apply Scorch, so Ember of Singeing will apply constantly. Red Death Reformed is pretty great because if you have the Catalyst, you can get free Restoration 2 after getting a multi-kill with it. And then another really solid solar exotic primary is Vex Mythoclast. It also has a linear fusion rifle mode that does work with the artifacts, so that can be really effective too. If you're using a legendary, which is generally what I end up in with this build a lot, I recommend a Heal Clip and Incandescent legendary. Heal Clip will proc Ember of Benevolence if you're anywhere near your teammates, and Incandescent will proc Scorch for Ember of Singeing. Just keep those buffs up and rolling so your ability regen never really stops. A few of my favorite weapons here: Luna's Howl from Standard Onslaught, Aberrant Action from Episode Echoes, that is Solar Rocket Sidearm and is very good. Nullify from Salvation's Edge is the best pulse rifle in the game currently with this. And then Summoner from Trials of Osiris is probably the best auto rifle in the game with this perk combo. So lots of good options to work with. Now, let's get into a little bit of gameplay. So this is the Ogre boss from Grasp of Avarice. It is one of my favorite places to test DPS. I will make a disclaimer at the very beginning of this video. I am not the best at DPS rotations, so you can definitely see better damage somewhere else. This would also probably go a lot smoother if I was not solo, but it was just easier to record that way, and it gives you kind of pure damage numbers. This encounter can be a little bit finicky just because you have to do so much stuff at once. You have to kind of juggle your buffs and also deal with all these enemies and this ogre shooting at you constantly, but we manage. Just going to open the door here, and then we'll be going into attack. I did mention this earlier, but this is not an abilities focused build, so just make sure you are good with your weapons and you know how to use them well. I'm using Luna's Howl here. It is very solid. The recoil on it is a little bit unique though, so that takes some getting used to. I'm a little bit rusty here, so not making all my headshots, but that's okay. Just gotta collect all these orbs. Make sure you carry your special weapon with you. I don't really talk about your other weapon slot, but slice weapons on Strand are very nice because slice inflicts sever, which is a pretty big debuff to enemies' outgoing damage, and that is just really effective for keeping you alive. Solar does not have a lot of damage resistance, so decreasing that damage any way possible is very effective. Just gotta kill this guy again and get a few more of these shiny engrams, and then we can start the DPS phase. One thing to mention as we are waiting for mechanics is, well, was nerfed somewhat recently to have a little bit less healing and damage resistance than it used to, so it is not the kind of free savior that it used to be, but it is still very strong. Restoration 2 is extremely strong. You can just see how we're just tanking so much damage from these crowds. Hellion is really good with Ember of Empyrean to keep your damage kind of going and just keeping your buffs up. Do remember as you get close to damage phases that you need some way to apply a solar weapon buff. So you need either your melee up to apply Radiant, or you need your grenade up to apply Restoration 2. Either of those are effective. See, I just melee those enemies. Place the well, and then I'm using Finality's Augur, so I put the turret up and focused it on the boss, and then I'm just making sure bait and switch is procced and just attacking this boss here. You can see whenever you have a pause in reloading or anything, just use your healing, use some cover. It only takes a second to heal back with the well, but you might just need to break in the damage. You might have to reproc bait and switch periodically. The turret from this will apply it a bit though, and that is the end of the first phase, so you can see the damage. Pretty respectable 2.2 million. Now I do have one more chunk of gameplay that's just the swap DPS phase. So you can see here, DPS is started, pop the well, swap to arc, and then pull out Queensbreaker and just unload. You can see this does pretty solid damage. We do have to be a little bit more careful because we don't have backup healing grenades in this, so we just have to keep bobbing behind this pedestal so that it gives us cover. Luckily the weapon is doing enough stagger to keep the boss just a little bit off of us. Let's see, we've just about got it, and that is the end of DPS. And this ends up at comfy 2.4 million, just under 2.4. As you can see in that gameplay, both options are extremely viable. I could probably push a little bit more with either of those. I wasn't probably perfect on all my crits, but very solid, very good either way you take it. Just to briefly summarize the gameplay loop, if you're not swapping, pop Healing Rift for Hellion, use Healing Grenade or Melee to gain a solar buff for Limit Break or Artifact perk, pop your well, deal damage. That's it. If you're swapping, all you have to do is just change your subclass as well as casting, and you're good to go. Not super complicated, but very effective. It will take a little bit of practice to get really good with your DPS rotations, which I'd recommend you're doing if you're getting serious about Rite of the Nine, because it takes some practice, especially with higher skill weapons like linear fusion rifles. Usually I would conclude the video, but now we have more builds to go through, so I'm going to go through these pretty quickly just because I don't want to make this video last forever. First up is Strand. As I was looking at this, I also happened to be watching a YouTube build video talking about Euphony, and I was immediately thinking, man, Euphony would be really good with Sanguine Alchemy. If you're not familiar with this is a special linear fusion rifle that as you get kills, it will spit out threadlings, and as you deal damage with threadlings, you get up to 50% weapon damage boost, which is very good. And then on top of your Sanguine Alchemy surges and damage bonus, it's just extremely strong. And if you can get somebody to give you empowering somehow, maybe use an empowering rift, or someone else gives you radiant, or someone else is running well, you will do just absurd damage with this. It's pretty straightforward. You take Weaver's Call for more threadlings, you can take the Wanderer for a little bit of suspend, and we're going to do that so we can get some class ability back from killing suspended enemies. I recommend Healing Rift on this one generally, just because you don't have a lot of healing on Strand, and we obviously need to take Threadling Grenade to proc that. And then really all you're going to do is just park in your Rift, fire off Euphony or another strong Strand weapon. With artifact perks, you can get Woven Mail too, so that you have a lot of damage resistance and some healing from that Healing Rift that will just keep lasting as long as you keep getting kills, and it's just very effective. Don't forget to take Thread of Evolution on this build because it makes the threadlings do 33% increased damage, and that includes all of them. All these weapon damage boosts do not apply to the threadlings from Euphony, with one exception. The hatchling threadlings will get buffed by the Strand weapon surges and any empowering buffs. So I've seen them do 50% more damage. That is only when you get a precision weapon kill with this weapon. So that is helpful, kind of nice, and sometimes you'll just get one really strong threadling just nuking something, so that's kind of cool. Moving over to Arc. This one is really focused on having high uptime on Arc Soul because you can extend that rift, you can really just have Arc Soul forever. And then on top of that, you're going to be blinding enemies by using Spark of Beacons with a special ammo arc weapon, or Queensbreaker, which is just extremely good. I'm using Arc Soul and Electrostatic Mind here, and then Flashbang Grenades and Healing Rifts, because once again, we don't have a lot of healing, and it's just very effective. You can sit in your rift, you get tons of Ionic Traces and have really high ability uptime, and it's just good. On top of that, you can stack in some Bolt Charge thanks to Spark of Discharge and Spark of Ions, and that's all just really good. On Void, this is actually a really fun one because this one you can easily take Empowering Rift because you can get Devour. On top of that, you can use Child of the Old God, so every time you cast your Rift, you get a little Void buddy that goes out and weakens enemies, so you can now stack Weaken, Empowering Rift, and all your other benefits from Sanguine Alchemy and just get a lot of damage boost. Now, because you're already getting weakened, you don't necessarily need to run a linear fusion rifle. We don't have the best Void linear fusion rifles here, so I'm actually running Edge Transit for exotic weapons. You could use some like Collective Obligation to debuff your enemies, or just Graviton Lance because it is really strong and very effective, and you can already get a lot of buffs from the artifact this episode. But this is just a really solid ad clear build. The one kind of downside I see in this build is there's not a lot of good ways to get your class ability back in the subclass, but Child of the Old Gods will help you get that a little bit, so it really doesn't feel too bad. Lastly, Stasis Sanguine Rift. I didn't think this one would be very good, but when I tried it out, it actually played really well. Your goal here is just keeping constant freeze on the field so you can get Frost Armor and higher Rift uptime. We get our Rift uptime from Whisper of Refraction, so killing any enemies affected by stasis effects grants class ability energy, so that's freeze, slow, whatever, and that's going to be everything on the field. Because we were taking Bleak Watcher, which will let us put out a stasis turret, then we're going to take Glacial Harvest, so all those frozen enemies make stasis shards, and then Whisper of Conduction will bring those back to us, and Whisper of Rime will let us get Frost Armor up to 8 stacks, up to 50% damage resistance. And now we have a near infinite healing rift thanks to Sanguine Alchemy. It is also boosting our weapon damage, and it's just very effective. We're just kind of creating a attack spot and just destroying everything, and then you get rift back and you can keep moving on. Really cool. way better than I expected. I ran this with VS Gel Inhibitor, which is the Stasis Heavy Grenade Launcher, and Tanasha's Mastery, which is the Stasis Rocket Sidearm, is so good for this and just a blast. And with that, that's pretty much it for the build. That's pretty much it for all the builds. I hope you've enjoyed all this. Just as we wrap up, I'm going to sit on the build review. And thank you so much for watching the video. I appreciate all the support on the channel as always. I hope you enjoy it. I love these detailed breakdowns and I've been having a lot of fun with them. I'm very excited for Rite of the 9. I hope some new stuff kind of shakes up in the meta. I still have a lot of build ideas. If there's anything you want to see, let me know in the comments. If you have any ideas, I love talking about builds. And if you really want to talk about builds, come join my Discord. It's pretty small, but it's a nice little community of people just coming up with cool ideas and throwing them around. And you can see what I'm working on because I usually get excited and post what it's like with all that. Thank you again, and I'll let you go. Thanks. Have a good one.